What's good, y'all? And welcome to another preseason preview video. In this one, we're going to be going over the Milwaukee Bucks. If this is the first preseason preview video you guys are seeing of mine, basically what I do is go through every single move of the offseason, give a little recap there, and then look into the future and try to see what we can expect from each team. After you're done with this one, make sure you check the link in the description. It'll take you to the playlist of all of the teams I've already done. Leave a like on this video, subscribe if you already haven't so you don't miss the next ones, and let's get right into it and talk about the additions that the Milwaukee Bucks made this offseason. Although they didn't have much wiggle room, the Bucks still were able to make some moves in free agency, signing Gary Trent Jr., DeLon Wright, and Taurean Prince. I don't really know how the Bucks did it, but they somehow were able to sign all three of these guys to just minimum contracts. That's it. These guys are making barely over $2 million this season. I feel like that's really good value for all three, especially the big name or the biggest name, and that is Gary Trent Jr., of course. There was a few guys in this free agent class that kind of just slipped through the cracks. All the money was used up, and they were kind of forced to take these small deals. And I really like this fit for Gary Trent to kind of help build his value back up for next year's free agency, because it is only a 1-year minimum he signed. He's going to be able to come over in Milwaukee and have a solid role, a starting role in my eyes. I feel like it's almost definitive that he's going to be the starting shooting guard on this team. The shooting that he brings to this team is going to be very much needed, spacing the floor for a guy like Giannis. He's also back playing with Damian Lillard again, which is pretty cool. I don't know how close they were, if that was maybe a part of him signing here as well. But all around, I feel like this is one of the most underrated offseason moves. I love the fit. I love the value of it, and I think Gary Trent is one of those guys that can come into the game and just kind of, spark fire at any moment and win you a game. Defensively, he's pretty solid as well, so he'll be able to kind of help on that perimeter. All around, I really do like this move. I feel like it's one of the most underrated moves of free agency, honestly. Now that I'm thinking about it, I kind of really like all the Bucks free agency moves. Moving on to DeLon Wright, too. I love this pickup because last year they really struggled with perimeter defense. Trading Jrue Holiday for Dame, obviously you're getting the better player, the better offensive player, but you're really missing out on that perimeter defense. They went out and traded for Patrick Beverley at the trade deadline to try to help that out. Malik Beasley was trying to be a point of attack defender. None of them really were able to do that. DeLon Wright is one of the most underrated defenders in the entire NBA. I will stand there and say that for sure. And then Taurean Prince, I really do think is a solid pickup as well on that wing. That 3-and-D type of guy. Just, again, space the floor, defend a little bit. Don't do too much, don't do too little, just kind of fit in where you fit in, and I think Taurean Prince can do that. And now that we've went over the guys that Milwaukee brought in, we got to talk about the guys that left this offseason. Milwaukee did lose a few guys this season in free agency, including Malik Beasley, who went out and signed with the Detroit Pistons, Jay Crowder, who is still currently in free agency at the time of me recording this video, and Patrick Beverley, who signed a deal overseas to play in Israel. When I look at the guys Milwaukee lost this offseason, I feel pretty good about it. I have kind of a similar stance between their free agency and the Mavericks free agency. When I did my video about the Mavericks, I talked about how all the guys that they left or lost in free agency, they kind of just replaced them with the same archetype of players and maybe even a little bit better. And I feel like Milwaukee did the same thing here. When you talk about Malik Beasley, he's a guy that can come into the game and be your main three-point shooting threat. A guy that can hit, 3, 4, 5, 6 threes in a game even, be that catch-and-shoot guy. They replaced him with Gary Trent Jr., who does all of those same things. Patrick Beverley is their scrappy, defensive-minded point guard. They replaced him with DeLon Wright. Again, same things that he can do. Then finally, you talk about Jay Crowder, who's your kind of 3-and-D-esque archetype of a wing player. They replace him with Taurean Prince. A lot of these guys, I feel like they just went down, same archetype, leveled up a little bit in this free agency class, and all around, I'm very happy with how the Bucks did, again, with how strapped they were. And now that we know all the moves the Bucks made this offseason, let's take a look at a potential rotation that we could be seeing. The starting lineup largely stays the same as it was last season, except we are including Gary Trent Jr. at the starting shooting guard. He's starting alongside Damian Lillard, Chris Middleton, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Brook Lopez. The bench, however, does look pretty different. We have DeLon Wright, AJ Green, Andre Jackson Jr., Taurean Prince, and Bobby Portis. Coming into the season, I feel like we definitely are going to be seeing a hungry Giannis. Last season, I feel like he had arguably his best season he ever had in the NBA. He was averaging 30 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, shooting 61% from the field, and he didn't even finish top 3 in MVP. I mean, he did finish 4, so it's not like he got completely snubbed. But still, in my eyes, insane numbers, insane production, insane value on the court, and he wasn't even top 3. Then, of course, at the end of the season, he got hurt and couldn't play in the playoffs. So, I'm sure Giannis is going to want to change these narratives back a little bit. Hopefully, he uses it as a little extra motivation and comes into the season really ready to kill. And kind of on that same tone, I feel like we're going to be getting a little bit of a bounce back year for Damian Lillard. He said before he feels like he doesn't get the credit he deserves. I forget what podcast he was on, but he said that. So I feel like that could maybe spark a little bit of motivation in himself too. But also, I feel like it was a lot going on last year. It's the first year that he's, has to become a second option and play alongside someone like Giannis. First time he's playing outside of Portland. He had to move across the country. I know he was dealing with some family stuff off the court as well that I'm sure was very stressful. So I feel like it was just a lot going on with Damian Lillard away from the basketball that kind of could be attributed to him having such a lackluster season. I don't want to say lackluster because, he still was an all-star and everything, but he didn't look like the same Damian Lillard that we all know before the trade. So I'm expecting him to kind of come into this season and be ready to go as well. But honestly, the guy that I am really looking at and I feel like is kind of an X factor for this Bucks team is Chris Middleton. I don't really know what Chris we're going to be getting because last season he was still kind of dealing with his injuries. When he was playing, he didn't really look the greatest just yet. But when he made it to that playoffs, he went absolutely nuclear. I know there was no Giannis, and I know for some of those games there was no Dame either. But still, when you're averaging 25, 9, and 5, like that's the Chris Middleton we need to see. He was shooting the ball great as well. He had a 42-point game against the Pacers where he hit the game-tying shot, I think, to force overtime. Incredible playoffs from Chris. Hopefully we can kind of see that as well in the regular season this year. And if we are, then wow, the Bucks could really, really shake things up. And then also real quick, I do want to say I have AJ Green coming off the bench for the Bucks at that shooting guard slot because I just feel like that's the best move in my mind if I'm the coach and everything. Doc Rivers, I could definitely see him lean a little bit more towards Pat Connaughton, the guy who's the vet. He's got the experience. Doc seems to kind of veer towards those, veteran players instead of the young guys. But I really like the shooting that AJ Green can bring on. He's not a bad defender either. So I would personally like him to be in the rotation, but I could see a world where it's Pat Connaughton instead of him. Now that we have an idea of what this Bucks team could look like, let's take a look at one of their strengths. Three-point shooting is definitely a strength of this Milwaukee team. They have a bunch of people that are high-volume shooters, as well as guys that are just high-caliber shooters that do knock them down when they take them. And in this new age of NBA basketball, three-point shooting is a must. Last season, the Bucks were a team that took a lot of threes, and I feel like they kind of got better shooting-wise this season as well. And it's not only just the fact that they're going to take a bunch of threes, it's that they have guys that can take different types of threes, if that makes sense. Obviously, they have Damian Lillard, who is one of the best self-creating three-point shooters we have ever seen in the history of basketball. He can make his own three-point shot anywhere on the court, got the limitless range. He can hit you with that sidestep, step back, one dribble thing. He can break you down and pull up in your face. He can, be going at full strength in transition, full speed, just pound dribble, pull up like that. He is amazing at getting his own three-point shots off. I don't think I really have to talk too much on him. Then even beyond that, though, they have guys like Gary Trent Jr. or Chris Middleton who can kind of create for themselves as well on the perimeter, but also be that catch-and-shoot threat. Sometimes they run Giannis at center, but if they don't, they have a stretch big running that as well with Brook Lopez or Bobby Portis. Both guys, some of the best stretch bigs in the league right now. Brook Lopez has his nickname Splash Mountain for a reason. And then they also have guys that can be used as just strictly spot-up catch-and-shoot threats to space the floor. Guys like Taurean Prince or AJ Green, Andre Jackson Jr. He kind of had a decent shooting season. Not a lot of volume whatsoever, but when he was was taking them. He was making them at a pretty high clip. All of these three-point threats, though, obviously it's great in the fact that, yeah, you could just shoot a bunch of threes, but it also is going to make it a lot harder to stop Giannis, who is one of the best paint finishers in the NBA. He's going to be able to kind of just drive to the rim now, and if they collapse, kick it out to the open shooter. If they stay out on the shooters, you have Giannis one-on-one going to the rim, and I love my chances at that. No team is perfect, though, so we got to take a look at the opposite end here and look at the Bucks' biggest weakness. The Bucks are an extremely old team, one of, if not the oldest teams in the NBA currently. 3 of their starters are over the age of 33, and 4 out of the 5 are over the age of 30. Not everyone is LeBron James that can just play to a all-star, all-NBA level till they're 40 years old. Most players start to regress once they're past that 35, 34-ish range. And I'm not saying that these guys are just going to fall off a cliff, but also at the same time, they probably will regress a little bit. Injuries, as your body gets older, it makes it a little bit more likely for you to go down with an injury. Again, I'm not wishing these things on the Bucks, but it's just the reality. Brook Lopez, who is the oldest player on the team right now at 36 years old, we saw last season he had a little bit of a step back in production and in defense. This season, maybe we might see another little step back. I know I was just talking about Damian Lillard and saying how I expect him to have a bounce back year. I do, but there still is a possibility that, he's got to that age where he peaked and he could be just slightly going down for the rest of his career. For Middleton, the same thing. We talked about how he was dealing with injuries. Maybe it'll be a little bit harder for him to fully recover and come back to that all-star level player that he once was. On paper, I really do like this Bucks team. I think especially their starting 5 and their top 6 to 7 players, I think are really, really solid. But, of course, regression, age, it all kind of just hits you like a truck sometimes, and hopefully for Bucks fans, it's not all at once this season. And they do have some young players in their rotation, guys like Gary Trent Jr. or AJ Green, both of them are 25. Andre Jackson Jr. is 23 years old. So they have a little bit of youth, but their main guys that are going to be playing a bunch of their minutes are over the age of 30. And now it is time for the fan segment, and here representing the Milwaukee Bucks, I got my boy, the creator of the Bench Mob blog, one of my personal favorite Twitter follows. Got my boy Finn here. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, of course, man. Always excited to talk some ball, especially with you. Yeah, excited to be here. Let's get it.
Yep. Well, we'll jump right into the questions. As a Milwaukee Bucks fan, what has been your favorite offseason move that they've done? I know they were kind of, strapped up. They didn't have much wiggle room, but I think they had a pretty good offseason. I'm interested to see what your favorite move is.
Yeah, I would agree. All things considered, I think the Bucks had a great offseason for what they could do. My favorite pickup is Gary Trent Jr. Obviously, getting a guy of his caliber on the minimum is great, but I also think that he does a lot of what the Bucks need. He can be our 5th starter at shooting guard, replacing Malik Beasley, and he's definitely an upgrade there. He's an elite shooter, high volume, high efficiency guy, can hit him on the move, and he's a decent defender too, can disrupt the ball, get some steals. Defense was a weakness for the Bucks last year. Dame, not great on that end. Malik tried, but wasn't great. So hopefully Gary can help improve on that end. And then I want to shout out DeLon Wright too, because he's a great role player for the minimum too. He won't start, but off the bench, his defense will definitely help boost the Bucks and improve what we need improved.
Yeah, I thought that your pick was going to be DeLon Wright. I felt like, I don't know, I feel like that's just your type of guy. I thought that's who you're going to come out here and say was your favorite. Honestly, I like all 3 of your major free agency signings of Gary Trent, DeLon, Taurean Prince in there too. I would probably agree with you though. My favorite would be Gary Trent, just because the fit is just absolutely perfect. You guys, you need shooting around a guy like Giannis. He can compete a little bit better defensively than a guy like Malik Beasley, who was, kind of thrust into that the role last year for you guys. And then again, for just the minimum, I feel like you really can't get any better than that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was just surprised to see that we got Gary for the minimum. And I think that's the best move we made. So that's why it's my favorite. But no, love the DeLon signing too. Taurean Prince is going to be solid. He's always solid. So I feel good about the offseason.
For sure. I think, yeah, the Bucks did with what they had. They did very good in my eyes. Moving on to this next question, though, who do you think is the most underrated player on the Bucks coming into the season?
I mean, that's a tough one, but ultimately, I think it might be Andre Jackson Jr. Um, I think that like last season, it seemed like all Bucks fans knew like this guy should be playing more. Like whenever he got on the court, I mean, he just kind of felt like a breath of fresh air with how hard he plays. He rebounds, he defends, makes good passes. I really think that he's ready to be in the rotation more than he was allowed to last season. I think he's the Bucks' best prospect at this point. Marjon Beauchamp hasn't really shown us much at this point. And obviously, we haven't seen AJ Johnson and Tyler Smith play yet. But so I'm super excited about what Ajax can do this year. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he gave Gary a run for his money for the starting spot. He's definitely been working on his shooting. I caught the Bucks in person last season, watched Ajax warm up. His stroke looks way better than it did when he was a prospect coming out of UConn. Kid works hard, he plays hard, and I think he's ready to play in the playoffs and be a long-term piece for this team.
Yeah, you continue to take the words out of my mouth. He also was my pick for the Bucks.
Hey.
I feel like he is just he kind of when he's on the court, like you said, it's like a breath of fresh air. The energy he brings, I feel like he's the perfect like complementary guy when you have your stars like Giannis, like Dame, to do all like the major things. He's one of those guys that kind of fits in and just does what needs to be done, whether it's rebounding or
Mm-hmm.
passing, defense. A quick cut here. I feel like he works very good in at that role player role. And
Mm-hmm.
I hope he can get more consistent minutes to maybe even grow into something bigger than that. I know Doc, he doesn't really like the younger guys. He leans
No.
to go more towards those vets. So we have to see if he does end up really like solidifying himself in the rotation. But looking at the roster, I feel like he kind of has that spot carved out for him, and I hope that he can, take advantage of it.
100%, 100%. I'm excited to watch him play.
Yes, sir. And then lastly, before we finish this up, what are your expectations for the Bucks? I know the season ended a little shaky last year with injuries, and then obviously in the playoffs it didn't go what you guys were expecting. So what are you actually expecting for this season?
I mean, I think that like overall the expectation for the Bucks at this point has to be championship or bust. As much as like a conference finals run, just losing like the Celtics or something could feel like good, like in a successful season. But like, I think that as long as we have Giannis and we have Dame, like we're going for the championship. And so I think that that's like, if that's the ultimate goal, then like that's the expectation. And the window is closing as Giannis and Dame start to get up there in age. And so that's the expectation. And then the other thing I would say is like I expect or hope that like the young guys should be given a chance during the regular season. That is not Doc Rivers' thing, but I think that like if we're gonna win a championship, Ajax or AJ Green or Tyler Smith or even like Chris Livingston could potentially be guys who help us get there. And so I hope to see them get more of a chance this season because even if a championship isn't the outcome, seeing growth from those guys would make it feel like more of a successful season, at least with like the long run in mind.
Yeah, for sure. I know you guys don't have too many young prospects on the team, so seeing those guys kind of get some more burn would be like kind of a silver lining if you guys do fall short. You already had that one season of Dame and Giannis kind of meshing together. Look good sometimes, look bad other times. Hopefully now they can, really get that moving. You got Doc having a full off season with the team. So I definitely expect you guys to have a better, the regular season was pretty decent. Hopefully now in the playoffs, though, I can expect you guys to take an extra step, into this season.
Yeah, I mean, as long as everybody's healthy, it's been disappointing to see Giannis keep going down with injuries because he's such a regular man, or a regular season Iron Man. To see him like get these untimely injuries is just unfortunate. And so I'm hoping for health, expecting a championship, but overall I'm excited. I think the Bucks will be very good this season, and so I'm excited to watch them play.
For sure. As a Knicks fan, I know firsthand how important health is. So hopefully,
Hmm.
you know, everyone in the NBA is healthy. I know it never ends up working out like that,
Right.
but that's all you can hope. I appreciate you coming on, Finn. If you guys already aren't, make sure you check out those links in the description. Follow him on Twitter. Check out the Bench Mob blog. Great reads,
Mhm.
great articles. I appreciate you coming on, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. This was a ton of fun.
And now it is time for the ceiling, floor, and my expectations for the Milwaukee Bucks. Starting off with their ceiling, I could see them being as high as the 2 seed out east. I feel like when you look at the landscape of the Eastern Conference, it's the Celtics and it's pretty much everyone else. I don't really see them in any way being better than the Celtics unless something disasterful happens out there in Boston. But still, the 2 seed is a great, place to be at. And if everything breaks their way, I could see them having a very deep playoff run, at least making it to the Eastern Conference Finals at their ceiling. It would be very tough to knock off a Boston team, but I mean, it'll at least be a competitive series. Then when you talk about the floor for the Bucks, I have them as low as the 6th seed. Like I said, it's Boston at top, and then below there's a chunk of teams that's like New York, Philly, Milwaukee. I feel like Milwaukee's kind of at the bottom of that group, which, in a bad situation could end up with them being a little bit in the group below them, messing with teams like Indiana or Cleveland or Orlando. I don't think they'll be lower than all of those teams, but I could see them slipping to about the 6th seed. If they do end up falling over down to the 6th seed, that means that they will have to verse either Boston, New York, or Philly, and that would be a very rough first round matchup for the Bucks that I don't think that they would be able to beat either of those teams. My expectations for the Bucks though is probably around that 4 seed. Like I said, I have them towards the bottom of that secondary group of New York, Philly, and Milwaukee. I have them as that 4 seed right there, throwing Boston on top of that. And then in that case, they would probably be going maybe a rematch with Indiana, or Cleveland could be up there, Orlando. Those are teams that I could definitely see Milwaukee beating in the first round. But once you get to that second round, you have to beat one of those top 3 teams in that second round. And it would be pretty rough, especially if they end up at that 4 seed. It would probably be the number 1 seeded Boston Celtics, and I don't see that happening. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, though. Where do you think the Bucks will end off in this year's standings? Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you leave it a like, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. In the description, there's links to all my social medias, so make sure you follow me on all those to keep up to date with me. Catch y'all.